Hello, friends. For the first time in human history, we have created a tool that can produce the appearance of thinking without having to endure the struggle of thinking itself. And that should give us pause, because it raises a deeper question, one that sits quietly beneath the excitement, beneath the productivity gains, beneath the celebration of innovation. If thinking can be outsourced, what becomes of the human mind? To understand the weight of this moment, we need to step back, not into last year or last decade, but into the long arc of education itself. In a medieval university, education was never about employment. It was about liberation. The trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, what many universities and colleges call language arts, and quadrivium, a group of 4 subjects, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, were not simply subjects. They were disciplines of the mind. Grammar taught clarity. Logic taught reasoning. Rhetoric taught expression. Together, they formed a human being capable of thought. The Renaissance deepened this vision. Humanism emerged with a radical claim that the human being is not merely a function within a system, but a creative, thinking, meaning-making presence in the world. Education became a way of recovering dignity, imagination, and selfhood. Then the Enlightenment brought its own promise: reason, critique, autonomy, the idea that through disciplined inquiry, we could free ourselves from dogma and see the world more clearly. Across these eras, one thing remained constant. Liberal education was never about information. It was about transformation. But something shifted. Gradually, the question changed. We moved from asking, what kind of human should I become, to asking, what kind of job can I get? Education became professionalized. Metrics replaced meaning. Efficiency replaced reflection. And in this shift, something essential began to erode. Max Weber saw this transformation unfolding in his time. He called it the iron cage, a world increasingly organized around calculation, control, and efficiency. A world in which institutions no longer ask what is meaningful, only what is measurable. And in that world, we do not necessarily become more free, we become more efficient, at the cost of our humanity. Now, consider where we are today. Generative AI emerges as perhaps the most powerful tool of efficiency ever created. It writes faster than we do, synthesizes faster than we do, produces endlessly without fatigue. And students, with the blessing of their institutions, are beginning to outsource not just tasks, but processes. Writing, reflection, inquiry itself. This is not simply a pedagogical issue. This is a philosophical one. What we are witnessing is a form of cognitive offloading at a scale we have never seen before. And with it, the risk of cognitive atrophy. Nietzsche warned us about this in a different language. He spoke of the danger of becoming passive, of losing the will to struggle, to overcome, to become. The will to power, in its deepest sense, is not domination over others, it is mastery of oneself. It is the act of becoming. But what happens to that process when the struggle is removed? Foucault, in his own way, reminds us that power does not only repress, it produces. It shapes us. It forms subjects, and the most effective forms of power are the ones we internalize, the ones we willingly participate in. We no longer need to be forced into Weber's cage. We carry it with us in our devices, in our habits, in our quiet reliance on systems that think for us. And Herbert Marcuse gives us perhaps the most haunting warning: the rise of one-dimensional thought, a flattening of critical consciousness, where efficiency, productivity, and technological rationality replace deeper forms of critique and imagination. In this light, the question is not whether AI is intelligent. The question is whether we are becoming less so. But here is where I want to pause, because to frame AI as the enemy would be too easy. And more importantly, it would be wrong. AI is not the enemy. In many ways, it is the most powerful intellectual tool we have ever created. The real question is how we relate to it. There is a profound difference between using AI as a substitute for thinking and using AI as a partner in thinking. If I ask AI to write for me, I remove myself from the process. But if I use AI to challenge my assumptions, to refine my ideas, to push my thinking further, then something else happens. I become more engaged, not less. Andrew Feenberg, the philosopher of technology par excellence, reminds us that technologies are not neutral, but neither are they fixed in their meaning. They are shaped by how we use them, by the values we embed within them. Technology can dominate, but it can also be reclaimed, redirected, humanized. And this is where the future of liberal education must be reimagined. Martha Nussbaum has long argued that education is not simply about economic growth. It is about cultivating the capacities necessary for democratic life. Critical thinking, empathy, imagination, the ability to see the world from another's perspective. Henry Giroux extends this argument by reminding us that education is always political. It either reproduces the existing order or it challenges it. It either creates passive subjects or critical agents. In the age of AI, this distinction becomes even more urgent, because if we are not careful, we risk producing a generation that is highly efficient, highly productive, and yet deeply disengaged from the act of thinking itself. But there's another possibility. What if AI, instead of closing the iron cage, could help us see it? What if it could act as a mirror, reflecting our patterns of thought back to us, forcing us to confront how we think, why we think, and whether we are thinking at all? This is where the promise lies. Not in replacing human thought, but in deepening it. Not in outsourcing inquiry, but in expanding it. Not in abandoning liberal education, but in returning to its essence. Because the goal is no longer to outcompete AI. The battle is already lost. The goal is to become the kind of thinker who can enter into a meaningful dialogue with it. This requires a shift from answers to questions, from outputs to processes, from passive consumption to active engagement. We should not be asking students, did you use AI? We should be asking, how did AI change your thinking? Because that is where education still lives. And that is where the human being still emerges. We are, I believe, standing at a precipice. But not because machines are becoming intelligent. We are standing at a precipice because we must decide whether we will remain so. Whether fear a world of specialists without spirit. We may be approaching something even more unsettling. A world of users without minds. And yet, there's still time. Because the story is not finished. We're not witnessing the end of thinking. We are being invited to decide what thinking will become. Thank you.